This episode of Fishing Gurus is in association with Shimano Gen X poles.
Hello and welcome to another exciting episode of Fishing Gurus. I'm Wendy Lythgoe and we're here today at one of British Waterways waters, Boddington Reservoir. Now we've got one mega method for you today that our very own fishing gurus, Mick Bull and Alex Bones are going to show to you. Now Mick, first cast, first fish, what is it you're doing?
Yeah, we're fishing the pellet waggler.
Pellet wag.
Yeah.
It's taking fisheries by storm, isn't it?
It is, yeah.
Now what kind of venues would you fish this on?
Well, on commercial carp venues, you know, that have got a lot of fishing.
Heavily stocked
Yeah.
sort of venues. And what is this method then? How did it come about?
Well, because commercial waters are seeing more and more pellets these days, a pellet waggler works fantastic on them, you know.
And you say pellet waggler, what is it?
Well, it's a little stumpy waggler,
Yeah.
very buoyant, and works with a lot of feeding.
So the key part is keeping the feed going in then?
Yeah, a lot of feeding, yeah.
Well, as Mick said, the floats are important. Let's go and take a look. Well, Alex, we've got a real assortment of floats here, haven't we, for the pellet wag. Now, this is kind of the old traditional style waggler, isn't it? And I suppose this is where it kind of evolved from. So what kind of shape and size are you looking for in the wagglers you're using?
Well, the key thing with the pellet waggler is to look for a short, sort of dumpy design. There's various ones available made out of all sorts of different materials, from balsas and high density foams. The key thing is that it's really buoyant. My preference is for this particular version, which is a Carp silverback. This is actually a balsa design and they're really buoyant.
Right.
Because I'm fishing to the line clip as well, when I'm casting out, it's hitting the line clip and the float's not diving, it's slapping on the top and sitting straight away.
So is that weighted, that float then? Has it got any weight in the float?
This is actually attached bottom end only, and as you can see there, I've attached it with shot either side to cock the float. But as you rightly say, there are a lot of already weighted versions available as well.
Would you use them or?
I think a lot of the time it comes down to personal preference. At the moment, this is the style that I favour, just because I like to fish with shot around the float. I think it also helps to stop the float diving by having the shot there.
So you've got more resistance?
Exactly.
Right. And what about the rest of the rig?
Well, simplicity is the key with this sort of fishing. So I've got 6 pound drag line as a main line, running down to 0.22mm end gauge, which breaks about 9 pound, size 16 MWG, with a knotless knot, hair rig, and a small band to attach the hook pellet. That's it.
So there's no weight down the rig either?
No shot at all. Basically, I just want the weight of the bait falling through the water at the same rate as the feed pellets.
Well, that was a great insight into floats from Alex. Now let's go and have a chat with Mick. Well, this is a familiar sight, Mick. You're playing a fish, another one.
Yeah, another one.
There's been a few now, hasn't there?
Yeah, it's been really good.
Yeah, been good days fishing.
Yeah.
I know there was one thing with this method that I know a lot of people struggle with, and that's at what depth to fish.
Okay.
How do you decide?
I always sort of start at a set depth, but you know, normally about 3 foot, something like that, and then change it throughout the day, you know, depending on the weather conditions and whether they come up really high in the water.
And how do you know that? How do you know if they've come up?
Well, because a lot of the time you can see them, you know, you can see them just topping, and you're also getting a lot of sort of liners on on your line, your float's going under you, you're missing them, and that just goes to show that there's plenty of fish in your peg, you know, but you just got to shallow up and catch them a bit quicker.
So you're keeping an eye out there all the time?
Oh,
as well,
all the time, yeah.
So what happens if the bites slow up though? What would you do then?
Well, earlier on the wind started blowing and the bites did slow up, so I went deeper, had a few, but in an ideal situation, you would, like in match say situation, you would have a bomb and pellet rod set up which you could just chuck out and you'd catch underneath where you've been feeding.
So you'd have a cheeky chuck on the tip.
Oh yeah,
then?
you would, yeah. And sometimes it changes your session into like not throwing a waggler again,
Yeah.
you know, it just depends how good it is.
That's brilliant. Well, it's definitely working today, isn't it?
Yeah, very good, yeah.
Well, as Mick puts another one in the net, let's go and see what rods and reels Alex is using. Yet another one on Alex, a real bend in the rod, which takes us on to our next thing, the rod and the reel, because this is quite a crucial part as well, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, getting every aspect of your setup right is really important. In days gone by, we used to use 13 and 12 foot traditional type waggler rods.
Yeah.
But with the pellet waggler evolving and becoming such a dominant force on carp venues, many manufacturers now make pellet waggler rods specific for the job. This one is a multi-length 911 Beastmaster commercial, which is perfect for the job. I'm using it 11 foot today as opposed to the shorter length, just because I'm casting out there. The wind's a bit tricky as well, but for smaller waters it's really good at the shorter length.
So what kind of action are you looking for then?
What I want is a rod that bends right through. The reason for this is because it's cushioning the hook hold and basically maximising the number of fish I get in the net. It's absorbing, as the fish is nodding, it's absorbing all the lunges and taking the strain off the hook length.
So a stiff rod or something would be the worst possible choice, wouldn't it?
It would also affect your casting. This has got a great casting action as well.
So moving on to the reel then, what are you looking for there?
The reel's a Rerenium CI4, which is a front drag only reel that I've loaded with 6 pound drag line. Basically it's really smooth, it's got quite a fast retrieve ratio, so it allows me to fish quite quickly. But the key element to it, it's got a brilliant drag, which helps again to land more fish. So it's all about just balancing the setup just to get it right.
Yeah, brilliant. Well, Alex is putting another one in the net. We can see he's got the right tools for the job today. Mick's on the same setup, so obviously it's bang on.
The name's a bit of a giveaway really, but the pellet waggler works best of all with hard feed pellets. In your local shop you'll find there's loads to choose from, so let's take a closer look. Mick, what have you chose to use today and why?
I've chose 8mm halibut pellets because they're denser, they catapult further, which means in windy conditions you can always cover your float.
Okay, and do you think a high oil pellet's more attractive than a low oil carp pellet?
I would tend to use a higher oil pellet, yeah, if it was allowed.
Yeah.
Some fisheries don't allow it.
Sure, and the pellet being denser as well, they obviously sink faster.
They do, yeah.
So they are maybe again better when you're looking to fish the bomb over the top of the pellet waggler and things like that.
Yeah.
Well, in contrast to Mick, I've chosen to use a lighter coloured 11mm premium carp pellet today. 11mm size does sound rather large, but for fish of 3-4 pound upwards, they're a perfect choice in windy conditions. On venues where I'm not casting as far, don't need to fire the bait as far, I do prefer to use a slightly smaller pellet, usually an 8mm. In addition, I also carry some 8mm Supermarine halibut pellets. You'll notice that these are slightly redder in colour and much darker like the pellet Mick's chosen to use today. The reason I carry these with me is because often you'll find a change from a light to a dark hook bait or vice versa can get you a bite if the fishing's gone a little bit hard. Well, I don't know about you, Mick, I'm ready to fire a few more of these in and catch a few more carp.
Yeah, let's go for it.
Now I'm here with Mick, who is a really successful match angler, and he's got probably one of the biggest matches under your belt, which was the Fishermania.
Yeah.
25 grand must have been nice.
Lovely.
Any
Yeah.
chance of dinner tonight?
I've spent it, I'm afraid.
You spent it? Not
I'll
even
take
a
you
Big
for
Mac?
McDonald's if you want.
That's all right then, manage with that. So this method, has this played a crucial part in any match wins?
Yeah, it has. Yeah, I've set a couple of match records throughout the Midlands.
Just a
doing
couple?
Yeah, just a couple. Yeah, but as you can see, it's so productive. You know, once you've perfected it, you know, it really works well.
So you've won many matches on this then, would you say?
Well, using this method and a bit of both, as you know, like I said earlier, bomb and pellet as well. You know, you sort of don't very often fish a whole match fishing a pellet waggler. You know.
So in other words, it's a method that would be sort of a banker method and putting fish in the net?
Yeah, well, obviously you start and set everything up at the start, and depends on how the match goes as to what you do and throughout the match. But this method's, you know, great weight builder as well, because normally the fish are a lot bigger, shallow, than what they are, you know, on the bottom.
So what was this weight, the record that you set at Packington?
Oh, about, I don't know, 150 pounds, something like that.
Just £150.
Not just 150
Yeah.
pounds.
So as we can see, this is a really effective match method, but it's not just for matches, it's also really successful in your pleasure sessions, so give it a go.
When I'm using pellet wagglers that are attached bottom end only and I'm using shot to trap the float in place, I like to use a short length of 0.3mm micro silicone on the main line. Once I've pinched the shot on, this prevents it from damaging the line, which could cause breakage and lost fish.
This episode of Fishing Gurus is in association with Shimano Gen X Pulse.
Well Alex, this method's definitely working today. Oh, I've got one on. It's been one a chuck, hasn't it?
Well, so far, yeah, it's turning out to be quite a productive session.
So why do you think it's been so successful?
Well, generally speaking, with fishing, it's often the case that the more you put in, the more you get out. Today, both Mick and I are working really hard in fishing terms by constantly casting the float in, always feeding, and just basically working the swim.
So you're just not sat still at all?
I mean, my fishing's following a rhythm today whereby I'll cast out, fire 4 pellets on top of it, wait 10 seconds. If I've had no bites, 4 more pellets. If no bites again, wind back in, cast back out on top of the feed. So it's always working out. I'm even feeding now. I mean, I've had this one on, say, 20 seconds, and I'll just trap the rod between my legs, fire 4 pellets in, and then carry on playing the fish. I mean, it's really important.
That's a nice fish, that Alex, as well.
Yeah, the fish have been a great stamp today. Great fish to catch.
Well, this method's definitely been working for Alex today. Another one's going in the net, and I'm going to leave him to it. From experience of working in a tackle shop, a question that I always used to get asked was, what size hook should I use? So Mick, for this kind of fishing, what hook would you use?
Well, I use an MWG for a start, which is a wide gape, very sharp hook, and I use sort of a 16 for an 8mm pellet, and I use a 14 for an 11mm pellet.
So you're matching the hook to the bait then?
Yeah, you see, if the hook's too small for the size of the bait, then you get lots and lots of takes and that sort of thing, but the fish never get hooked.
So basically the bait's therefore masking the point of the hook then, I suppose, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah.
Another thing I noticed as well, you've got a little bit of silicone on there as well. Why'd you put that on?
Well, I always use silicone these days now because I like the bait to stay right round the bend of the hook instead of like waving around, you know. Plus the fact, rigs get tired throughout the session, and you can just keep sliding that silicone back down again, and it's another perfect rig every time you chuck it out.
So it's keeping the hair pinned then to the
Yeah.
hook. Brilliant. And you've got a bait band on as well. Oh, and also you've not got one on that one.
No, that's a lasso.
Right.
So we've got that lassoed on, and then we've got a bait band there actually tied into a loop. Okay. If you knot it on, the knot sometimes tightens and cuts through the bait band.
Brilliant. So we've got the cowboy rig there then, and then we've got the bait band there.
Yeah, that's right,
brilliant.
yeah.
Well, I hope that's answered your questions. So don't forget, match your hook bait to your hook size.
My top tip of the day is the line on your reel. It used to be £4 for waggler fishing. Years ago, the carp were so much smaller, and now they're big. So these days it's £6 and £8 without question. Right, most important thing is to fill the line on your spool right to the brim. It casts so much easier, it just spills off with even light wagglers. That's the tip of the day.
Now here at Boddington, we've obviously got a lot of water in front of us. But Mick, is this just a method that's restricted to open water fishing?
No, not at all. You can use it hard up against islands as well, very effectively.
So if you're fishing up against an island, would you use your line clip then?
Yeah, all the time, yeah. Otherwise you just keep chucking it into the island.
You'd be in the sedges.
Yeah, that's right, yeah.
Have you used your line clip today?
No. Because here they're very big fish, and a lot of the times when you're fishing the pellet waggler, you cast in, it rips off, and you just can't get the clip off in time. So it ends up breaking your hook length or whatever.
Yeah, not a good day's fishing then.
No.
So how have you decided on what distance to fish today?
Well, I've sat here and catapulted a few pouchfuls of pellets out, which have given me an idea comfortably where I can fish. You know, I haven't tried to really stretch the elastic and go too far. I reckon I've probably gone about 30 yards.
Brilliant. So I suppose if you're trying to fire them out too far, you're going to have quite a spread of pellets as well,
Well,
aren't you?
yeah, the idea is to keep it really tight, or as tight as possible. You know, like you say, as far as you're trying to catapult your pellets out, they're spreading out even further.
And the conditions haven't been perfect today as well, have they, with the wind?
No, the wind's changed. It's gone from left to right. It's gone in our faces, and not once has it blown off our backs, which would have been perfect. But you know,
You can't always get it like that every
No,
day,
you
can you?
can't,
Not with the
no.
weather over here anyway.
No, that's right.
So, brilliant. Well, let's go and have a chat with Alex and see how the session's been going. So Alex, we're well into the session now. You've caught loads of fish. How's it been going for you?
Well, it's been up and down all day, largely because of the conditions that we've been faced with. It started off quite windy, settled down, it was really good, and the wind's really picked up again. It feels like we're fishing in the North Sea, to be honest.
It is freezing. You wouldn't think this would be ideal, you wouldn't think you'd catch, but...
I mean, the ideal conditions for pellet wag, I think Mick touched on it earlier, when it's either, you know, flat or you've got a slight ripple off your back, that helps with your casting and with your feeding. It's all made that bit easier. A crosswind like we've got here is causing the float to veer off, making it a little bit harder to fire the pellets.
It's not as easy to cast either, is it?
I mean, with that said, I think I've probably got 9 on 30 carp already, which is, you know, a fantastic day's fishing in anyone's book.
So have you kept changing things today as well?
All day, I mean, Mick and I have both been tweaking the rig all day just to keep those bites coming. It's not been a case of I've caught 30 fish in one hit. It's been you'll catch 2 or 3, have to change something, you know, adjust the rig, deepen off a little bit, maybe shallow up, or maybe even feeding a few more pellets has helped today. Instead of feeding 4, I've fed 2 pouchfuls, you know, maybe 20 pellets at a time, then cast over, and that's made the difference.
So what would you normally feed? How many pellets at a time would you start off feeding?
I like to sort of feed 3 or 4 pellets at a time, just because that helps to create the competition up in the water. And then with only 4 pellets hitting, the fish are always looking up for the bait. If you feed too many pellets, they miss them and start following the bait down to the bottom, you see.
I suppose they're going to miss your hook bait as well, will they?
Exactly. I mean, your feed bait, in effect, if you feed too much, is going to take the fish away from where you actually want to catch them.
Yeah, you touched on about moving the depth of the float and everything. Would you also chuck out the straight lead like Mick suggested?
Yeah, without a shadow of a doubt. When it goes hard, that is really the way to catch a few fish in between.
Because I suppose some people think that the fish have moved out of the swim, but that's not always the case, is it?
Oh yeah, I mean, it's so easy to think that. I mean, if you're say you catch 2 or 3 fish on the trot and then don't get a bite for 5 minutes, you question in your mind, well, have they moved off? Have they gone to the guy next door? But it's often the case they're still there. They just maybe backed off a little bit if you've caught a few. They've seen their mate get caught, you know, so it's a case of just keep working at it. I mean, all day I've just kept firing bait in, just relentless basically, to draw those fish back in and keep the competition in the swim.
These guys are top class anglers, but one thing that's become clear to me today is that they have not stopped working the swim, and I think that's something that's key to your fishing. Well, the guys have been on fish for fish, but let's spice things up a bit. I've got a handful of pellets each. First one to catch a fish, loser buys the drinks. Well, these guys have had an amazing day's fishing. Lads, have you enjoyed it?
Yeah, it's been great. Yeah.
Alex?
It's just been absolutely fantastic, yeah, loved
Well,
it.
I think Mick's had the better day because he got to win the drinks off you.
Well, everyone gets lucky now and then, eh?
Yeah, I suppose so.
Well,
yeah.
he doesn't often get his hand in his pocket and get the round in, so
No, he
well
doesn't,
done,
no.
Mick.
I'm feeling thirsty as well.
Right, lads, you're going to get these fish back.
Yeah, sure.
Now, I have learnt loads from today's session, but to recap, the key points to remember are: make sure your rod and reel are balanced and up to the job, keep casting to the same area, feather the line or use a line clip. If the bites dry up, change the depth, but most importantly, keep casting, keep feeding and keep working it. If you do all that, then your next session on the pellet waggler could be the session of a lifetime.
This episode of Fishing Gurus is in association with Shimano Gen X Pulse.